We have one of the top information individuals in the business of the National Football League from Sports Illustrated. Our friend Albert Breer and his wonderful Nantucket 10 is here in person. Good to see you.
I'm still working on it. Usually I get you a little later in camp, so I'd say
Good to
I'm
see
still.
you.
This is like my base layer. Right
Okay,
now.
so very good. So here's the scoop. In this business, okay, of the National Football League and so much more. Del Tufo's, come on in. You can correct his mic. Doesn't matter.
Sorry about that.
It's all good. Mike Del Tufo's correcting things. There you go. You sitting back. Thank you. So you have to multitask, right? You gotta look at your phone. You gotta be able to focus in terms of conversations, and you're excellent at that. And right now we're about to see how excellent Albert Breer is, because as he's appearing right here on this program, his family just got off a plane here in Los Angeles, trying to make their way to an Uber to make their way to the studio.
Oh, baby.
And
I'm a little nervous about it, too. I'm a little nervous about it.
Is your phone blowing up of like, where do we go, whatever? Because I know. Are you okay? I mean,
you know what scared me was when I started to talk to the people here.
Yes.
About the Uber situation at LAX, which apparently is unconventional.
It's a little dicey.
Yeah, so you can't just walk out to the curb and pick one up, I guess.
Let's be honest.
It's a little dicey.
Yeah.
But you're so far so good. If you need to,
they'll be good. They'll be good. I trust them.
We'll all they got to do is get within the vicinity of here, and we'll get them in.
I got it.
We're good.
Yeah.
So the story of training camp 2024 writ large, because you're kind of kicking off our training camp coverage right here on the program. I appreciate you doing that.
Well, thank you for having me.
Of course. Is what? What would you say?
I like, it's just kind of hit me last night. You see the Trent Williams thing, and
where he's not there. He's holding out.
Not holding in, holding out.
Right.
And I just, it's almost like players are again realizing their worth. And you see these contractual situations bubbling up like everywhere now, and how one thing relates to the other, which is so interesting, right? Like, so you see what happened earlier in the offseason with the Dolphins with Jalen Waddle, with the Lions with Amon-Ra St. Brown, with the Eagles with Devontae Smith.
And A.J. Brown.
Yeah, and with the Texans with Nico Collins. And like, those teams were super aggressive getting deals done. Well, why? Because they knew Justin Jefferson was going to get done.
Definitely.
And so now you have the Niners and the Cowboys hanging out there with Aiyuk and Lamb, right? The Cowboys obviously have more than just Lamb hanging out there. They also have Dak and potentially Micah Parsons. Like the Trent Williams thing to me relates back to Christian McCaffrey, right? Like, now the Christian McCaffrey thing was quietly began after the Super Bowl. Like, and this is a guy who felt his football mortality as a running back, felt like he was worth more than he was being paid, was correct about that. They felt like they had to do a contract adjustment before they did Aiyuk. Because if you do Aiyuk, then all of a sudden Christian McCaffrey is going to say, well, wait a minute, like, maybe I want a little bit more.
So
but then you have to consider, okay, how's that going to affect the rest of our roster? And then you have Trent Williams over here, whose number for this year is a little lower on the contract than it has been in other years. He said, well, if you give him an adjustment, I'm the best left tackle in football. I'm your most indispensable player. So it's just interesting to see these things bubbling up across the league now, and I mean, at the highest level with the quarterbacks, we never really have quarterbacks hold in, right? Like, because Jordan Love's not holding out, but
he might as well be.
In that case, it's like, generally, in the past, we've seen quarterbacks approach it like, I'm a little bit different than the rest of the guys here. It's hard for the team to function without me out there. Now, Jordan's a great person. I'm sure he's doing everything he can, but he feels like I got to get mine now.
So the question is, as you know more than anybody else, certainly since the times when we worked together at NFL Network, the hallmark of it was wondering when the hell midnight was going to strike on the collective bargaining deal and the holdout and the lockout of 2011, where you were on a street corner in Washington, D.C., and I was sitting in the NFL Total Access studio in L.A., and we were talking daily, like, when the hell is midnight striking? It's a midnight strike league. The question is when does midnight strike on these situations? Because quarterback, wide receiver, whatever, there is obviously week one as a midnight strike. Correct. Yeah. But there's also tons of practices that you need to get under your belt here.
Right.
And so I don't, and in this day and age now where we're going to end up talking about maybe expanding the offseason and things like that, where for more off days and moving the start of training camp up, I'm just wondering, and there's also the midnight strike of, you knew Justin Jefferson was going to get done. So why would you not have midnight strike earlier for you first?
Right. Like, say,
when does
we're going
midnight
to set a deadline of the draft.
When does midnight strike? You know,
and I think it's interesting because when the owners did the CBA with the players, they strengthened the holdout rules again, and maybe didn't anticipate like, okay, like, well, how are the players going to react to this? Now, obviously, it's different in the case of like a CeeDee Lamb or a Trent Williams who are holding out, so they're accumulating fines now, and those guys' contracts are going to be big enough where they can say, okay, well, I may be losing this much money a day. I think it's $50,000 a day. I could be losing this much money a day, but I'm going to force them to give it back to me in the end, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas guys who aren't making as much money can't do that. And the problem with holding in, like, and again, like, this is something maybe the owners didn't anticipate, is that is right in front of like the team's face. Like, you know, like Bill Belichick always had that line, like, we're only going to discuss the players who are here.
Right.
Well, now the guy's there. You know what I mean? Like, so,
yes.
So the guys who are holding in are actually there. And it's a way to create leverage. It's a way to kind of have it right in the team's face, and the teammates see it and everything else. And, you know, other teammates observe how their star teammate is being treated. So it's tricky for the coaches, you know, it's tricky for the front office. And, you know, I think ultimately, does Brandon Aiyuk need a month and a half of practice to be ready to go? Does CeeDee Lamb need a month and a half of practice to be ready to go? Probably not. But there does come a point where you're like, you're going to increase the chance of injury. It could affect performance.
So you're saying middle of August is a midnight strike?
I mean, I think that there's a point where it's like, you know, maybe going into that preseason game where you're going to play the guys, whether you use the second preseason game or the third preseason game that way. That's changed a little bit since they shortened the preseason. But I would say when you kind of shift from camp mode into like, we're going to do a mock game week, and we're going to like put in like just the bones of a game plan.
Right.
That's when the teams really shift from, all right, this is like we're in competition mode, to we're in getting ready for the season mode. And I think that that's sort of, I guess, the first unofficial checkpoint that's coming if guys are committed to staying away early on.
Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer here in studio. So let's drill down on Aiyuk and CeeDee Lamb a little deeper. What is the holdup? Do they want more than Justin Jefferson? Do they want to be paid the highest at their position?
I don't think it's that. I think it's more where the market was and where the market is now. And I don't think, like, now CeeDee Lamb might have a little bit more of an argument. He went for 1,700 yards last year and 12 touchdowns. But I think those guys in an honest moment would tell you, like, no, like, you know, what Jefferson's done is historic. And we've been really good players, but, like, yes, like, that guy deserves to be the highest paid receiver in football. But that also affects how they're going to be paid, whether you want to pay them more or less. Like,
right.
It's, if you're the agent for CeeDee Lamb, if you're the agent for Brandon Aiyuk, you're going to say, like, look, like, the market changed, and we may not be asking you to pay us 35, but you're not going to get away with paying us 28. The way Waddle got paid, the way Smith got paid, the way St. Brown and Collins got paid, right? Like, they're right in that range. Well, that's, I mean, I'm not great at math, but 80% of Jefferson's deal. Do you think Aiyuk or Lamb are going to go for 80% of what Justin Jefferson got? Do you think those prideful guys are going to say?
Well, I think there's probably some people out there who are looking at Aiyuk and not putting him in the same category as Lamb. I think you could do that. So, because I have some numbers here. I don't know how I'm going to find them here on my phone, but
here's what I would say about Aiyuk, though.
Yeah.
I would tell you, and I think I've said this to you before, I think if you ask people in the Niners organization who they would rather keep long-term, Brandon Aiyuk or Deebo Samuel, I think it would be 10 out of 10, Brandon Aiyuk.
No kidding.
And I think when you look at that, plus the fact that George Kittle's older, plus the fact that Christian McCaffrey's older, plus the fact that you've got this young quarterback who you're going to pay, who you're going to want to invest in, I think it is a priority for them to get Aiyuk done. And I know the numbers don't reflect it, but, like, you have to think about the circumstances he's in too. Like, who was the number 2 guy for the Cowboys last year?
I mean, obviously it's what Cooks. You'd say it was him. Right. No, I understand. It's a big step. The next step's a Lulu.
The numbers, like just the number, like Brandon Ayuk's numbers by definition aren't going to be what some of these other guys are, because Kittle and McCaffrey and Deebo, and so.
But in terms of Lamb, here I found the number from NFL Network research. Most receptions in the first 4 seasons of a career in the history of the National Football League. Justin Jefferson is 4th with 392. CeeDee Lamb, 395. He's third.
Right.
So he has at least some metric to put on the table
To say I should be paid that way.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. If you are him, right, you've been eligible for a deal for a year now. Same way Justin Jefferson was, right?
Yes,
you
sir.
took on the extra year of injury risk.
Yep.
You waited, right? Like you didn't take what they were offering in March or April. And the benefit to that is the market could change.
And you played all 17, which Jefferson did not.
Right.
And the Vikings off of that season where Jefferson did not paid him. And Lamb, I mean, his numbers last season.
It almost caught me, but when I look back at it, like this is a few months ago,
dude,
and I was doing something on that, like, and I looked, I'm like, God, I didn't realize 1750.
1749.
Right.
Rounding up is very, very accurate. 135 receptions. I mean, that's the most in both of those categories in the history of the Dallas Cowboys.
The franchise of Drew Pearson and Michael Irvin.
Yeah,
and
the other 88s.
Yeah.
He's an 88 clubber of for sure. The receptions ranked first in the NFL, receiving yards second, and receiving touchdowns 12, ranked third. So
now if you're the Cowboys,
that's your walk. That's your resume that you go in and walk in. Like that's why he's working out in Houston right now and didn't hop the flight to Oxnard.
Right, and that's where. Again, like those numbers, they tried to strengthen the holdout rules by making the fines more expensive, right?
No.
But now when the salaries start to escalate, well, now that becomes less relevant, right? Like I lose a couple $1 million to get 35 guaranteed, 35 million a year, plus a huge guarantee. It's worth doing that, you know? So, and I think what's interesting too, again, like how these things tie into each other. You think say CeeDee Lamb signs next week. You think Micah Parsons is taking a dime less? You've just set the floor for Micah Parsons.
Well, Justin Jefferson helped set the floor for Micah Parsons. That's the whole point,
right?
You know,
Nick Bosa set the floor for for Justin Jefferson.
And guess who's setting the floor for Dak? I mean, Trevor Lawrence.
Yep.
And when Jordan Love gets paid,
and that's the problem with waiting.
Jared, of course, that's the thing, and you know, because we've been going on and on about this since Jerry Jones came up with a new definition for all in, and he's from Texas, you know. So I don't know what sort of hold'em he plays, but I guess hold'em is just hold on your roster and not really improve it through free agency. And that's the same thing with Aiyuk with what John Lynch, because he knows Brock Purdy is coming around the corner.
Yep.
And you're not going to sign him now, obviously.
Right. You can't by rule. Yeah.
So at some point you gotta save all that. So you're saying the contracts and everything, that is the story of training camp, rather than. Because I don't see too many quarterback competitions, which is normally another training camp storyline, right?
Yeah, so I would say the contract situations, just because I would say to go back to 11, when they made it hard to hold out, we've seen a lot fewer holdouts. I would say over the last, 14 training camps now. Right. So I would say the uptick in guys who are willing to go to the mat with their teams. Because what we've seen, I think, as kind of a result of the new rules, is guys are rattling cages in the spring now and staying away from the spring stuff and like trying to get it done earlier, so like they don't have to take on the fines in the summer, like
T. Higgins,
right? And so like now you're seeing that a little bit more in the summer, right? Which is, I think, an interesting development. And so like, yeah, I'd say the uptick in training camp holdouts, and maybe that's just me being a prisoner of the moment because it's happening right now.
Right.
The quarterback competitions, I would say like there's that difference in the way that each rookie quarterback's being handled, right? Like Caleb is the starter.
Yep.
Jayden Daniels is likely the starter, but not yet.
Why? What's going on there? I don't understand that. Why? What's with you have to say the word likely. I'm not complaining what you're saying. Why aren't the Commanders just treating him like Caleb? Like what's with the fig leaf here for on the on the altar of where we compete? Like, so
yeah, if there's one word that like defines Pete Carroll's program, it's
always compete, which is okay. Now I get it. Well, that's where Dan Quinn comes from.
It becomes hard to say. I think the big thing is, and I know people see these as artificial sometimes, but it's really hard for a new coach to come in and sell that to a guy who might have been in the league for 5 years, and then he sees a rookie quarterback being handed the job.
Come on, no. Yeah, I mean, it's not just any rookie quarterback here.
Right.
It's the second overall pick and somebody that you as a veteran know, like the kid's got to play.
I think what
win.
I think what it comes down to for DQ though is like he wants the veterans to see it, and like he wants them. And look,
he's the coach.
I think you can make up the reps. Like I think a big part of it for like we need the veterans to see that he won the job.
Okay.
And once it becomes obvious, which I think it will because he had a good spring, it's a little bit of a different philosophy than, like what they're doing in Chicago, which the Chicago situation is fascinating because they started installing with him before they drafted him. Like they were installing with him in March. Like when they use those, you're allowed 3 1-hour Zoom calls.
Yep.
They were installing the offense with him. They were. I mean,
what do you mean? Like,
well, they were putting the offense in with him. They had Shane Waldron, who's the new offensive coordinator there, Matt Eberflus. They were putting in the offense, and they didn't call it that at the time. But when they brought him for,
that's what putting them on. He was putting them on the board with their their playbook.
But they're putting in the offense, and then they get to, they get to the 30 visit in April, and they had him at a table with Cole Kmet and Tevin Jenkins and the leaders on that team, DJ Moore, like those guys were like, so we're going to get the veterans comfortable with him. So when he shows up at the end of April, he can hit the ground running. And when we get to training camp, we're flying, and I think part of that's the makeup of the team too. Like, I mean, look, like they've been building for 3 years there. They've got, again, DJ Moore and Keenan Allen and Montez Sweat and Jermaine Edmonds. Yeah, I mean, but I'm talking about veteran players where it's like those guys aren't sitting around waiting for a rookie quarterback to develop. So in that way, Matt Eberflus is serving what he's doing. But yeah, they were creative about the way they did that. And again, like they were trying to position him with his teammates and with the scheme where he could hit the ground running when he was drafted.
And how about all of this stuff too, that he's going to demand this, demand that. He's taking different approaches. He winds up going to the team that drafted him and signing the rookie contract.
Conventional contract, right. I think that was part of that, like, and look, like from everything I've heard, his dad's a really, really smart, accomplished businessman.
Yes.
One thing that was interesting that I heard about that, and we'd all kind of talked about that over the last year, right? Like, is his dad going to be a problem or an issue?
Yes.
So going back to, and I can remember when they interviewed Cliff Kingsbury in January, and that was actually a fact-finding mission for Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus coming out here to interview Cliff Kingsbury. They interviewed a couple of guys in L.A., and Cliff flat out told them, like, I've seen his dad in our facility one time. That's it. It's like his dad handles the business side. His dad advises him on the business side. His dad is not involved in football. So they had all of these business ideas that obviously not a lot of them came to fruition. Mm-hmm. But they're trying to maximize him from a business standpoint.
Makes sense.
I think the concern was for a lot of teams was that that's going to spill over into football. And Cliff, who was with him here at USC last year, assured them like his dad was no problem, and so, I mean, and Cliff's been through those sorts of things before, obviously as a college coach with the Cardinals, all of that. Like, so he, it was his process was really, really interesting. And I think the business end of it was like, let's see what we can do, and you throw enough darts, you're going to miss a few.
Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer here. We just showed in our Roku channel only segment the Jim Harbaugh introductory video that was put out by the outstanding Chargers social media team where he was, I guess, reading a poem or something like that. Was he just
it's
a
up
mission
on
statement?
It's up on the. It's like the welcome to the locker
room. A mission
room.
statement that nobody's born on third base.
Mm-hmm. You inspired by that?
You know what? Here's, and I think I think I
run through a wall right now.
I think I texted you and Money Manager to the Stars, Don Weir. You two of you are my Ohio State buddies in a text chain that we all have together. I think I texted something similar to this to you. Is that Paul Feinbaum replacing Jim Harbaugh with Ryan Day as his favorite punching bag is a plot twist I didn't really see coming. So that happened.
I think he just doesn't like the North.
Is that it?
I mean,
it's a geographic thing because you were.
Well, he knows his audience. Paul's smart. He knows his audience.
You weren't going geography when Harbaugh was the punching bag. You were just letting that happen.
But we all grow and learn things over time. We all grow.
So you saw Jim just yesterday, right?
Yeah. It was great catching up with him.
Okay.
Yeah. So he, I've said this like in all seriousness.
Yes,
one of the things I respect most about what he's been able to build is it looks exactly the same everywhere. And you know this better than anybody.
Yeah.
What it looked like at Stanford, even when Andrew Luck was there, right? Like how physical they were, the multiple tight end sets, what they did with Toby Gerhardt, to then San Francisco with Frank Gore and how physical the defense was, then to the 9 years at Michigan. And like he knows what he wants. And you know what stuck out to me the most, though? This is going to sound corny.
Good.
The world would be a better place if everybody liked their job as much as Jim Harbaugh does.
No,
I mean, he legitimately loves his job. Like, it jumps out to you. And I wish I had I wish when I covered him before, when he was with the Niners, I had that in mind going out there, because going out there yesterday, like you see him walk out there and kind of some of the things that he's doing early in practice. Like there was one point, this is a funny story. So they had the El Segundo government officials, firefighters, police out there in the field for a ribbon cutting for their new facility, which is beautiful.
Right across the street.
Right down the street, right? Yeah. So they bring Jim over, and one of the Chargers guys said to him, okay, so here's what we're going to do. Just come over and say hello and say hello and like kind of meet everybody. And Jim says to this person, well, like, you want me to bring the team over for the photo op? It's like, no, Jim, you don't need to do that, right? So he goes over and he spends probably 10 minutes, like shaking hands, having conversations with all the El Segundo people, and then, walks away. 15 minutes later, right before the ribbon cutting, you hear like 3 whistles, and he's waving the entire team over. And so, like, this ribbon cutting, now all of a sudden you see this massive picture with like 90 Chargers behind the ribbon cutting. And it was like,
I love it.
It was one of those things where it's like such a Harbaugh thing. And you can see now, like, the buy-in he's getting. It's a guy who loves what he does for a living and genuinely wouldn't rather be anywhere else. And I think maybe there's a little bit of a better understanding of who he is and what he is now than there was even in 2011 when he came to the Niners, which I think makes the Chargers really dangerous.
Well, a few things just to comment about what you just said there, because you speak to people with the Niners, and obviously I don't think he was enjoying that job towards the end.
Yeah.
Like it got a little dark. Yep. Everyone would tell you that.
Yep.
Okay. And then it's great to see him back in the NFL, smiling like, Jim, and it's because it is infectious for everyone around him.
Yeah.
And, the buy-in for people here in LA, Charger fans, and this is why I'm glad the Chargers went ahead and got him for them. Obviously, it was a little bit of a blow to lose Jim to the pros, but that's for another day. Because we don't know too many, like the OB who gave birth to my 3 kids and yours, Chris, the great Bobby Katz.
Yes.
He's like the only Charger fan we know.
Smitch. Yep.
Okay.
Not many.
Of our staff. Like, we can count on one hand the number of Charger fans that we personally know here. And how about you, TJ? Do you know many Charger fans, like, personally?
I know 2, Frankie Delgado and Janita Peraza. That's it.
Okay. And the 5th one I think that we all know is that woman who got her 15 minutes of fame going nuts on ESPN, right?
Yes.
All right.
She's the number one.
So that's it. You put them all together. But if you do run into Charger fans, they'll all like, well, wait a minute. I mean, Keenan Allen, we let him walk. And Mike Williams let him walk. And who's going to catch the ball? I mean, Quentin Johnston was a total, bust as a first-round pick last year. Is he going to be the guy and whatever? It's just, no. What you just said about Jim knows what he's going to bring. It's the same everywhere.
Yep.
The same sensibility, mentality, playbook. And he got 2 Ravens, Gus and J.K. Dobbins.
Yep.
And he's going to get a fullback. And
you got Joe Alt.
You got Joe Alt for the right side, which is not even what he plays.
Right.
But now he does, because you got Rashawn Slater on the left side.
Yeah.
And they're going to go to work, and they're going to hit you in the mouth. And that's not what you got out of the Chargers. You just got weird 4th down decisions, crazy chargering type things. And
it's going to happen in a league that's got full of teams built to beat Patrick Mahomes. And I mean, like it's just.
I proffer to say, and I never want to say Kelsey can't or won't, but I mean, Kelsey has owned the Chargers more than the Spanoses.
Yeah.
I would imagine that changes.
Yep.
Like, for starters.
Yep.
Obviously he and Mahomes would kind of have their say. I find, and again, obviously I'm biased when it comes to Jim, like, this is top 5 story. We already have the number 1 story.
That's why
being
I was there the first day.
Number 1 story is the Chiefs, having an opportunity to three-peat.
Yeah.
But a top 5 story is, what will Harbaugh do coming back? Because if he pluses the chart, he plussed the Niners up 7.
Right.
His first year. He does that, the Chargers are a 12-win team.
all due respect to the other guys too, he's never had a quarterback like this.
That's another point too.
I mean, like, I think about it, and I think I've used this line with you before, and this is no affront to Andrew Luck or Alex Smith or JJ McCarthy, but I think the genius of Jim is he's always gotten more out of his quarterback by asking less of them. Like, the temptation always for a coach is, I have this great quarterback, I'm going to put everything on him. And like, everything's going to be about him, and he's going to have to carry the team. And Jim kind of goes the other way with it. Like, you know, like, it's letting go of Keenan Allen and Mike Williams because he knows what he's going to build. And it's like, instead of 2nd and 11, now we're in 2nd and 5, and things are so much easier for Justin Herbert. Right. And, you know, I remember having this conversation with Greg Roman on how they fixed Alex Smith. And he talked about how Alex Smith had been through, you know, 5 different offensive coordinators his first 5 years in the league. He's like, we needed to slow everything down with him where he could just go out there and play. And we needed to get to a point where, like, he's doing the things he does well, and everybody else around him is supporting him and doing their job. And they fixed Alex Smith, which at the time, it sounds like not a big deal. It was a very big deal then. And so you look at a guy who did that with Alex Smith in San Francisco and then got Colin Kaepernick to the level that he did. And, you know, at Michigan, with J.J. McCarthy, knew all the right buttons to push, even if J.J. wasn't throwing for numbers that would have won him the Heisman. And now he's got this. Now he's got Justin Herbert. And you might not be asking the world of Justin Herbert, but hey, Justin, convert 3rd and 4. You know what I mean? Like, it's really intriguing, like, what they could do. And
certainly here in this town where the Rams, you know, literally own the building, and this town, I think, you know, in terms of football, there's more. You know, there's more Rams fans in this town. Yeah, and the Rams are coming off an excellent season, Buzztown, and he's as buzzy as they come, man. You know, and I can't wait for this season. It's unbelievable. Albert Breer here on the Rich Eisen Show. And another fascinating aspect, I think, is the Steelers and Tomlin getting his contract again. Yep. And what Arthur Smith can do. He's a sort of an outside, if you will, guy coming in offensively. And what I believe is Russell Wilson's last chance. I believe. Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
Last chance to start.
To be like the established starting quarterback, yes.
And to not only start in this league, but last chance to start for him rebuilding a path to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
Like, that is what I believe is on a line here for a team that has young stars in the toughest division in football. Right. Am I wrong? That's the way I'm seeing this.
I think, I mean, like, how many years have we had where, like, people would pick a Mike Tomlin team to finish last in that division, he wouldn't blink. And that's not a commentary on Tomlin or the Steelers, just how strong the division is.
Sure is.
I mean, the Browns with, 5 different quarterbacks went to the playoffs last year. The Bengals were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago and were really competitive even without Joe Burrow last year. You know, and then obviously the Ravens are the Ravens, the number 1 seed last year.
Derrick Henry on that team, I can't wait to see it.
Yeah. So I think what's interesting about the Steelers is the name you mentioned, Arthur Smith, and how he has been, over the course of his career, able to rehab or build up quarterbacks in a certain way. And I think it kind of bit him in Atlanta, right? Like, where, like, in Atlanta, it was like, well, we can make it work, right? Like, and maybe they went a little too far with it, but you look what they did with Ryan Tannehill in Tennessee and how they were able to build an offense. Derrick Henry wasn't Derrick Henry until Arthur Smith got control of the offense, you know? And then Derrick Henry became this, like, absolute monster because of the run game they built for him. And you've got these 2 quarterbacks in Russell Wilson and Justin Fields that are a little different, and how do you use them, you know? And I think the addition of Justin Fields to the room is really interesting too, because so many of the questions on Russell are personality based, right? Like, will he be like just a foot soldier? Can he do that? Can he be like a guy that teammates will rally around? Well, Justin's not perfect, but Justin's like militaristic with his approach. You know what I mean? Like, well, yes, sir, no, sir. We'll listen to his coaches. We'll do everything you ask of him. His teammates will love him because he's tough as nails, right? So I think the addition of Justin Fields to that room is really interesting, because now it's like, okay, like, Russell, like, this is what you're going to be compared against personality-wise, work ethic-wise, all of that. Not that there's been question about Russell's work ethic, but we all know that what's been out there with him, right?
Right, exactly.
And so Justin's sort of the opposite of that.
The weird stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. I haven't heard any of that out of Pittsburgh. Seriously. Like nothing, not like different offices, different this, different that.
Yeah.
It seems like, because it was weird to me that he was signed, and it's just like, he's going to be the starter to the point where Kenny Pickett's like, what gives? I want out.
Yeah.
And now it's his gig, man. This is his gig. And they have some weapons.
Yep.
They got Arthur Smith. They got the defense. They got Tomlin buzzing around. There's some reason for optimism there.
You draft an offensive tackle in the first round. You know, you hope George Pickens can benefit from Arthur Smith as well. Freiermuth's a good young tight end.
Another team that a lot of people aren't talking about, too, are the Dolphins, I think.
Yep.
And, you know, the fact that whereas Love's not unsigned right now is because the general sense is they're crossing T's and dotting I's.
Yep.
Tua is unsigned right now. The general sense is because Miami still can't buy in to the tune of 50-something million, you know, and he was at practice today, didn't suit up. So I don't know if he's announced he's holding in.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, I don't know. Like the coach loves him. Yep. And the players love him.
And if you look at the way that they have built too, like they've built in a way that really is
for him.
It's for him, right? Like they let Christian Wilkins go. They cut Jerome Baker. They cut Xavier Howard. Like that defense has taken some body blows. Vic Fangio's gone now. And yet they paid Jalen Waddle. They're getting ready to pay Tyreek Hill again.
And they draft more fast people.
Right. And so like you look at like their setup and it's like, this is going to have to be about Tua.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And so, and if you're the Dolphins, like, let me take you through this scenario. If you're the Dolphins, do you look a year off into the future and say, we can draw a line? Because you look at Atlanta, and Mike McDaniel and Kirk Cousins were together in Washington, right? And everybody knows what Kyle Shanahan thinks of Kirk Cousins. Well, Mike McDaniel was Kyle Shanahan's right-hand man forever. And you see that they've got Michael Penix there. And Michael Penix might be the most pro-ready of the quarterbacks who came out this year. Do you look at it and say, you know what, we can draw a line? Because I'm not sure exactly where this is all going to be in March. But what if Penix looks really good in practice? What if Cousins goes down for 3 weeks and all of a sudden Penix really shines? Could the Falcons be looking to offload a guy who would really work for us, and we can get him for a lot less than we'd be paying Tua because the big numbers on the front end of that deal are gone? I think about things like that, like where it's like so many of these quarterback situations are like, and I think that this is like the way all of them work. It's like, what's behind door number 2, right? Like, so like if you're the Dolphins, like with most teams, it's like, it's really scary. The idea of like detaching for a quarterback, like the Giants with Daniel Jones. Like, well, what do we do if we don't have him? Can the Dolphins look and say, we got Mike McDaniel and we got these weapons and like, boy, yes, we love Tua, but like there might be an option for us behind door number 2.
That's a roll of the dice, man.
It is.
That after just 1 year, the Falcons would consider for the right offer.
It's just an example.
But that, I'm sure that's what people think in the NFL. It's their job to look at options while they're going through what they think might not be their best financial option right now. But Tua's got to be signed. Like this is
the concussion thing complicates it too, don't you think?
He didn't have it last year.
He didn't. But like I do think like and it's not just the concussions; it's the hip. It's like he's been hurt a lot. And I think
but not last year.
Not last year, but I think where it does complicate things is if you're the Dolphins, are you comfortable guaranteeing money 3 years out, 4 years out? And then if you're Tua, like, and you want to think about this with some level of empathy, Tua is like, I just played an extra year when I was eligible for a deal to prove to you guys that I could stay healthy, and you're still giving me crap about it, right? And you're still saying to me, like, you won't guarantee year 3 or year 4. Right. And I want that guarantee because I have had the injury problems. It does complicate it that way.
Huh. What am I not asking you about before I let you go? What am I not asking you about? What's in your?
Well, I don't have any travel updates yet.
Okay, good. What's in your quiver here? What are?
Yeah, you know, I'm really interested to go and see a few of these teams over the next few weeks. Like I think the Rams are really interesting because they've reset and
dude, they're good.
Yeah,
they're really good. They got these young players. They're all young.
Yep.
And everybody just thinks that they're last year be a little bit of an outlier, or Stafford is, brittle or whatever. I don't know what it is to overlook them.
Last year, what's fascinating about last year with them is that was their reset year. Like that was the year. That was the year. Like we talked for years about they're all in. Eventually, it's going to come crashing down on them.
Yeah, last year was supposed to be the credit card year.
They took on $75 million in dead money, and they made the playoffs. And they did it with these guys who are going to be on rookie contracts the next few years, and Puka Nacua and Byron Young and Kobe Turner, and now you look and you say, okay, like
Trent Williams,
right? And like now they've got a couple of guys for the defensive front. Now, losing Aaron Donald's a big deal, but they're really interesting because it feels like they're back on the way up, and they now have the capital to go get aggressive again if they want to over the course of the next few months.
Well, they lost Aaron Donald for the regular season.
Yeah.
We had Les Snead on a few weeks ago, and he's already thinking like he could be like an Eric Weddle deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Make the phone call. Top of the playoffs. What do you think, big fella?
Why not? Why not?
It's not like he's sitting around eating, devil dogs. You know what I mean? Putting on the weight. Sitting around screaming for mom's meatloaf. You know what I mean? Like he's
just crushing little Debbie.
I bet you he would be ready. Is all I'm saying.
It's kind of interesting too because I feel like them and the Niners. Don't you guys feel like them and the Niners are sort of reversed? Like the Rams were always that team that was all in and like now or never or whatever, and the Niners were the team that was the young team coming up, and now it's like almost flipped, where it's like the Niners are now the team that's like, how long are they going to be able to keep this together?
Yeah.
And the Rams are the team that's kind of on the way up.
With Jimmy Garoppolo is the backup.
Yeah, which is wild.
How about them apples?
Yeah.
All right, Albert Breer, thank you for coming here, sir.
Absolutely.
Greatly appreciate it. Go see your family. I'm hoping that they're in our green room right now. I appreciate the time.
Absolutely.
Anytime. I mean, you're never out here. That's the problem.
I know. But I made it out this. I made it out this time. Maybe I'll be out a few more times during the season.
Excellent.
We'll
I would tell you about a great pastry place here in Los Angeles, but just look at the Ohio State schedule and you're fine.
Wow.
How's that for going out the door?
Man.
Just as pastry as Michigan.
Is it really?
Kind of.
We're playing Texas.
All right.
What?
I don't know. Your schedule.
You're at Oregon, and then you're at Northwestern at Wrigley Field, and everything else is in the horseshoe pal.
I would say like
I saw that. Penn State. Pardon me. I didn't mean to forget Penn State. TJ.
I mean, who's been on the non-conference slate for Michigan the last few years? I don't know. I mean, we played home and home with Notre Dame the last 2 years. I think
Notre Dame, because Notre Dame will play you. I don't know why they're afraid of playing Michigan. They took us off the schedule.
Is that right?
Yeah. By the way, Michigan plays Texas in the Big House on the Saturday
before the season starts. Right? That's week one.
It's week one, and then the Lions host the Rams on Sunday night. It's a big football weekend in Michigan.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
Quinn Ewers going back.
Yeah,
play against Michigan again.
Huh?
Your schedule's harder.
Thank you.
But that's an outlier. It's been the other way around for a long time.
That's all right.
We got to play USC.
That's another shot
at UCLA, right?
And at Washington.
Right. Yeah.
USC's not.
Who else do they get? They got UCLA, right? Pretty much. I don't know. I don't even think they have UCLA. It's okay. Listen,
they don't.
No, it's all right. That's what happens when you're national champions. You just got to come at the king. Thank you for coming on, Albert.
Albert, I'd understand if you never came back after this, after the way you just did.
Albert and I are.
End of November can't come soon enough.
I know that.
I'll give. Rich deserves his time. I came in here a lot of years with my chest puffed out.
Yeah, exactly. Right?
I had to sneak in here this time.
It's been 3 years since.
That's okay, Mike. Thank you for that reminder.
Yeah.
Good job, Mike.
A guy.
Well, and on those countdown clocks, they all count the COVID year too. I don't know if you guys know
that. I got to save Albert from himself. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.